The skull-smashing rock, slick with human blood, thudded to the ground as the Ferengi gang leader Wezin spit on the broken body of Emily Robinson, not knowing her father was Kyle Robinson, the damned Galactic Consul of humanity. He had no idea the shitstorm of vengeance and destruction he had just brought down on himself and the Ferengi with this act of brutality. Emily had come to Ferenginar, the Ferengi homeworld, on a peaceful student exchange, bright-eyed and eager to learn about the Ferengi culture and build bridges between their peoples. Kyle, a tireless diplomat as humanity's consul, encouraged the trip, wanting to foster greater understanding. But many Ferengi despised the rising influence of humans in the galaxy. Cunning and greedy, they resented humanity's growing economic and political power. Extremist factions wanted to make an example of the humans, to put them in their place. When Wezin, a ruthless radical leader, learned the human consul's daughter was on Ferenginar, he saw a chance to strike a blow against humanity's strength. That evening, Emily was exploring an open-air Ferengi market, marveling at the exotic wares, when Wezin and his thugs confronted her. A heated argument broke out, the idealistic young girl appalled by the unethical Ferengi trade practices she witnessed. Wezin's men grabbed her roughly as she tried to get away. The last thing Emily saw was a jagged rock in Wezin's fist smashing towards her head. Light years distant at a diplomatic summit, Kyle was torn from a boring consul meeting by a shrill emergency alert from Emily's beacon. His blood ran cold as the alert reported her life signs fading. He raced for his ship, the fastest diplomatic vessel, and burned its engines at max speed to reach Ferenginar, praying to any gods that would listen to keep his daughter alive. But he was too late. He found her broken body, discarded like trash in the empty market, his bright, innocent daughter, beaten to death in a cruel hate crime at the hands of Wezin and his Ferengi brutes. Emily's murder would be the spark that ignited a firestorm of turmoil between humans and Ferengi. Kyle vowed to use his power as consul to hold her killers and the corrupt Ferengi system accountable, while a shadowy human group known as Cerberus saw an opportunity in the tragedy to destabilize Ferengi society and expand humanity's galactic power, even if it meant secret wars and sabotage. The Ferengi had no idea of the scale of retribution they had brought down on themselves by killing the human consul's daughter. They would soon learn the consequences of their cruelty, as the wrath of humanity and Kyle Robinson rained down on their world. Kyle pounded his fist on the polished conference table in frustration. Another useless meeting with Ferengi bureaucrats who did nothing but give him the runaround. He knew they were corrupt, in league with that bastard Wezin who murdered his little girl. But he was the human galactic consul, damn it. He had diplomatic clout, and he was going to use every ounce of it to drag Wezin out of whatever hole he was hiding in and bring him to justice. "This is unacceptable," Kyle growled at the Ferengi officials on the interface. "I've given you evidence implicating Wezin in my daughter's death. Arrest warrants should have been issued by now. Why are you stalling?" The Ferengi officials shifted uncomfortably, not meeting Kyle's eyes. "Consul Robinson, these things take time," one of them said, tugging at his gaudy collar. "We have procedures to follow. Wezin is a prominent businessman with many, connections. We can't just—" "I don't give a damn about his connections," Kyle roared. "He's a murderer and a criminal. Do your job and bring him in, or I'll make sure the whole galaxy knows the Ferengi government is nothing but a corrupt sham." He cut the transmission abruptly, seething. It was clear he couldn't rely on the Ferengi to deliver justice. If he wanted Wezin to pay for what he did to Emily, he'd have to take matters into his own hands. Punching in a code on his comm unit, he contacted an old friend. Jack Harper's grizzled face appeared on the screen. "Kyle, I heard about Emily. I'm so sorry," Jack said solemnly. "What do you need?" "I need a team, Jack," Kyle said, his voice hard. "People we can trust. The best damn operatives you've got. We're going to nail that son of a bitch Wezin and everyone who helped him, no matter how high up this conspiracy goes." "You've got it," Jack nodded. "I'll put out the call. We'll find the evidence to bury them." Over the next few days, Kyle and his assembled team worked tirelessly, sifting through financial records, surveillance footage, and intercepted communications. A damning picture began to emerge, a web of bribes and blackmail leading from Wazin to some of the most powerful Ferengi politicians on Ferenginar. Kyle was preparing to present his case to the Galactic Council when he was contacted out of the blue by a representative of a secretive human group called Cerberus. A man calling himself the Elusive Man appeared on Kyle's screen, his face obscured in shadow. "Consul Robinson, I have information you need," the Elusive Man said smoothly. "Data implicating not just Wezin, but key members of the Ferengi government in your daughter's murder and other crimes. I'm prepared to share it with you, for a price." "What do you want?" Kyle asked warily. He'd heard of Cerberus, and their extreme pro-human agenda made him uneasy. "Your influence, Consul. Push for policies that prioritize human interests in galactic affairs, and the information is yours." Kyle cut the transmission, his mind racing. He desperately wanted that evidence, but he didn't trust Cerberus. He couldn't become their puppet. Then he got the news that a Ferengi banker who had agreed to testify about Wezin's shady finances had turned up dead. An apparent suicide. Kyle's gut told him it was another murder. Scowling, he sent a terse message to the Elusive Man. "I'll accept your intel on Wezin, but this doesn't make us partners. I'll be watching you." The reply was almost instantaneous. "I'd expect nothing less, Consul." On Ferenginar, Wezin paced in his opulent study, barking orders to his underlings. "The human consul is still sniffing around. I need better security. Nobody talks to his people, understand? And get my supporters riled up. Spin it that the humans want to control us, impose their laws. I want protests in the streets." Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Kyle, Cerberus agents were already in action, hacking Ferengi systems, diverting funds to Wezin's business rivals, setting the stage for the Ferengi economy to collapse and for human corporations to fill the void. As anti-human demonstrations erupted on Ferenginar and tensions between the two races reached a boiling point, Kyle pored over the Cerberus data, cross-referencing it with his own findings. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering, but even as he raced to build an airtight case against Wezin and his co-conspirators, Kyle couldn't shake a growing sense of unease, a suspicion that he was being played. That his thirst for justice for Emily was leading him down a dark path, straight into Cerberus's shadowy machinations to destabilize the galaxy. He had to tread carefully, or the case of one tragic murder could ignite a catastrophic interstellar war. Kyle's investigation took a dark turn as he dug deeper into Wezin's activities. Working late into the night with Jack, they pored over financial records and intercepted communications. "Look at this," Jack said, pointing to a data file. "Massive transfers to offshore accounts, shell companies. Wezin's fingers are in everything." Kyle nodded grimly. "And the government's turning a blind eye. We need more." Their breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A Ferengi businessman named Zek reached out, claiming to have damning evidence on Wezin's operations. But before they could meet, tragedy struck. Kyle's communicator buzzed. He answered to hear a panicked voice. "Consul Robinson! Zek is dead, assassinated in his home." Kyle banged his head on the desk. "Damn it! This stinks of Cerberus." Before he could process this setback, alerts flashed across his screen. A new video from Wezin had just been released galaxy-wide. The Ferengi's sneer filled the display. "Humans claim to seek justice, but they lie. They exploit my people using one tragic death to grab power. I call on all true Ferengi to resist human aggression." Kyle watched in dismay as the message spread like wildfire, inflaming tensions across Ferenginar. He knew he had to act decisively. At an emergency Galactic Council session, Kyle made his case. "We cannot allow Wezin's actions to go unchecked. I propose immediate sanctions on Ferenginar until he faces justice." The vote passed, but barely. As sanctions took effect, Ferenginar erupted into chaos. Kyle watched grimly as news feeds showed riots in the streets, Ferengi attacking human businesses. Amid the turmoil, A cryptic message appeared on Kyle's secure channel. Want the truth about your daughter? Come alone. Coordinates enclosed. Every instinct screamed trap, but Kyle couldn't resist the chance for answers. He slipped away to Ferenginar, heart pounding as he approached the meeting spot, an abandoned warehouse. He stepped inside, senses on high alert. Suddenly, lights blazed. He found himself surrounded by armed Ferengi, Wazin at their center. The great Consul outsmarted so easily, Wazin sneered. Kyle's hand inched towards his concealed weapon. Why did you kill her, you bastard? Such language, Wazin tisked. I'll enjoy watching you die slowly. An explosion rocked the warehouse. Cerberus operatives swarmed in, guns blazing. In the chaos, Kyle tackled Wazin, pinning him. Talk, now! Kyle roared over the gunfire. Terror filled Wazin's eyes. She found out about the deals, the bribes. I couldn't let her expose everything. Kyle's grip tightened. You murdered an innocent girl to protect your illegal schemes? It was never about humans, Wazin babbled. Just profit, always profit. As Cerberus secured the area, Kyle's victory felt hollow. He'd caught Emily's killer, but at what cost? Staring at the carnage around him, he realized he'd been a pawn in Cerberus's larger game. Boarding his ship, Kyle's mind raced. He had to find a way to expose Cerberus before it was too late. The hope of the universe might depend on it. Kyle smacked his palm on the console, fury coursing through him. The elusive man's smug face vanished from the screen, leaving Kyle alone with his rage and betrayal. He paced his office, mind racing. Computer, pull up all files on Jack Harper, Kyle barked. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing years of mission logs and communications. Kyle scanned them frantically, looking for any hint of Jack's true allegiance. How long had his friend been playing him? A priority alert flashed. Kyle opened it to see chaos unfolding on Ferenginar. Rioters smashed storefronts bearing human logos. Smoke billowed from the human embassy. Damn it, Kyle muttered. He opened a channel to the Ferengi government. This is Consul Robinson. I need to speak with your leadership immediately. After tense minutes, a Ferengi official appeared. Consul, surely you see now the threat your people pose? Enough, Kyle cut him off. This violence solves nothing. I'm proposing a neutral trial for Wazin with judges from multiple species. Will you agree to this? The Ferengi's eyes narrowed. Perhaps, if you lift the sanctions. Done, Kyle said. Now call off the rioters. As soon as the call ended, Kyle's personal comm chimed. Jack Harper's face appeared. Kyle, we need to talk, Jack said urgently. Cerberus has... Save it, Kyle snarled. I know you're working for them. How could you betray me like this? Jack's eyes widened. Shit. Kyle, listen, it's not what you think. I infiltrated Cerberus to... I don't want to hear it, Kyle said, cutting the call. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Then he opened a secure channel to his most trusted advisors. I need everything we have on Cerberus, he told them, especially any links to the Galactic justice system. We have a serious problem. As reports flooded in, Kyle's gut twisted. Cerberus tendrils reached further than he'd ever imagined. How could he root them out without destabilizing the entire system? His comm chimed again, the elusive man. Consul, the shadowy figure said, perhaps we got off on the wrong foot. Cerberus can help you bring true order to... By starting a war? Kyle shot back. Never. I'll expose what you're doing. The elusive man's eyes glinted. Careful, Consul. You're in no position to make threats. Remember who holds the real power here. The call cut off, leaving Kyle shaken. He stared out the viewport at the stars, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. He had to find a way to outmaneuver Cerberus and prevent this powder keg from exploding. But how? Kyle's fingers flew across the holographic interface, encrypting messages to his trusted contacts throughout the galaxy. Admiral Chen of the Alliance Fleet, General Tassoni of Asari Intelligence, even the gruff Krogan warlord Rex, All received urgent communiques detailing Kyle's suspicions about Cerberus infiltration. "We need to move fast," Kyle muttered, glancing at the chronometer. He pulled up the dossier on Judge Kavox, the Volus magistrate assigned to Weazen's trial. Something about the judge's recent rulings didn't add up. A ping from his secure channel interrupted his thoughts. It was Chen. "Robinson, we've got something." The Admiral's gravelly voice crackled. "One of our deep cover operatives intercepted transmissions between Kavox and a known Cerberus cell. They're planning to rig the trial." Kyle's fists tight. "Send me everything you've got. I'm calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council." Hours later, Kyle stood before the assembled counselors, laying out the evidence of Cerberus corruption. The Asari counselor's eyes widened as she examined the data. The Turian representative chittered in agitation. "In light of this information," Kyle concluded, "I formally request a postponement of Weazen's trial until we can ensure the integrity of the proceedings." Before the council could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Kyle's Omni tool lit up with urgent alerts. On Ferenginar, chaos erupted. Grainy footage showed Cerberus operatives storming the planetary defense grid. Weazen's loyalists poured into the streets, attacking human enclaves. Kyle watched in horror as the human embassy went up in flames. "Counselors, we need to act now," Kyle shouted over the din. "Deploy peacekeepers to Ferenginar immediately." As the council scrambled to respond, Kyle's private channel chimed. An unfamiliar Ferengi face filled the screen. "Consul Robinson," the Ferengi wheezed. "This is Zek. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated." Kyle's eyes narrowed. "Zek? But how—" "No time to explain," Zek interrupted. "I've been gathering intel on Cerberus. Their main base of operations is hidden beneath the old Latinum mines. I'm sending you the coordinates now." Kyle's mind raced. With this information, he could strike at the heart of Cerberus's operation, but he'd need a team. He opened a channel to his most trusted operatives. Shepard, Vega, Tassoni, gear up. We're going in. Hours later, Kyle crouched behind a rocky outcropping, surveying the Cerberus base through his tactical visor. Plasma fire lit up the night sky as his team engaged the outer defenses. "Push forward," Kyle ordered, vaulting over cover. He sprinted toward the base entrance, dodging energy blasts. Inside, alarms blared as Kyle fought his way through waves of Cerberus troops. He rounded a corner and froze. Jack Harper stood before him, a cruel smile on his face. "Kyle," Jack sneered, "still clinging to your outdated ideals?" Kyle raised his weapon. "It's over, Jack. Stand down." "You don't get it, do you?" Jack snarled. "Humanity needs strength, not your weak diplomacy." They clashed, fists and feet flying in a brutal dance. Kyle ducked under a wild swing, countering with a vicious uppercut that sent Jack staggering. "Wake up, Jack!" Kyle shouted, barely avoiding a kick. "Cerberus is using you." Jack lunged, tackling Kyle to the ground. They grappled, neither able to gain the advantage. Kyle headbutted Jack, stunning him momentarily. With a final burst of strength, Kyle pinned Jack, securing his arms behind his back. As Shepard's team secured the rest of the base, Kyle hauled Jack to his feet. "This isn't over," Jack spat. Kyle's eyes hardened. "You're right, it's just beginning." Kyle's boots crunched on the alien soil as he surveyed the desolate landscape. Jagged rock formations jutted from the barren ground, their surfaces etched by harsh winds. The sky blazed an unsettling crimson, twin suns beating down mercilessly. His suit's sensors flashed warnings about the toxic atmosphere and extreme temperatures. Kyle checked his oxygen levels, running low, but enough for now. He turned to face the elusive man, who stood a few paces away, his own suit gleaming in the alien light. "We need to find shelter and resources," Kyle said, his voice tight. "Any ideas?" The elusive man's cybernetic eyes scanned the horizon. "There," he pointed to a distant cliff face. "Those formations might offer protection from the elements." They set off across the alien terrain, every step a struggle against the planet's punishing gravity. As they walked, Kyle's mind raced, processing the revelations of the past few hours. You manipulated galactic events for years, he said, breaking the tense silence. How deep does it go? The elusive man's laugh was bitter. Deeper than you can imagine, Robinson. The Skillian Blitz, the Geth attack on Eden Prime. Cerberus had a hand in all of it. Kyle's fists clenched. You're responsible for countless deaths. I'm responsible for humanity's survival, the elusive man shot back. You think the other species would hesitate to do the same? Before Kyle could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered. A massive serpentine shape erupted from the soil, its segmented body overflowing with razor-sharp spines. The creature's eyeless head swiveled towards them, sensing their presence. Run! Kyle shouted, shoving the elusive man ahead of him. They sprinted towards the cliffs, the monstrous worm in hot pursuit. Its massive jaws snapped shut inches from Kyle's heels. The elusive man stumbled, and Kyle hauled him to his feet without breaking stride. They reached the cliff face, scrambling up a narrow fissure as the creature slammed into the rock below. Kyle's muscles screamed as he pulled himself higher, loose stones cascading down around them. Finally, they emerged onto a small ledge, out of the monster's reach. Both men collapse, gasping for breath. Kyle stared at the elusive man, realizing he'd instinctively saved the life of his sworn enemy. Why? The elusive man asked, echoing Kyle's thoughts. Kyle shook his head. I don't know. Maybe there's still hope for you to see reason. The elusive man's expression hardened. My convictions haven't changed, Robinson. Humanity must dominate, or we'll be crushed. Kyle leaned back against the cliff wall, exhausted. And how many more innocents have to die for your convictions? As the alien sun sank toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the barren world, Kyle knew their uneasy alliance would be tested again and again. He had to find a way off this planet and stop the elusive man from unleashing Cerberus's plans on an unsuspecting galaxy. Kyle gripped the alien spacecraft's controls, his nucleus tightening as he navigated through unfamiliar star systems. The vessel hummed with strange energies, its interior a maze of crystalline structures and pulsing biomechanical components. He fought to push aside the memory of the elusive man's final moments, focusing instead on the coordinates seared into his mind. As he emerged from the last jump point, alarms blared. A massive Cerberus dreadnought loomed before him, its weapons already charging. Shit, Kyle muttered, yanking the controls hard to port. Energy beams lanced past, scorching the alien hull. His comms crackled to life. Unidentified vessel. This is Cerberus Command. You have entered restricted space. Power down and prepare to be boarded. Kyle ignored the message, diving beneath the dreadnought's firing arc. He pushed the alien craft to its limits, weaving through a deadly barrage of fire. The ship shuddered under the strain, unfamiliar systems flickering. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. Kyle, it's Chen. We've picked up your signal. Cavalry's incoming. Through the view screen, Kyle saw Alliance fighters swarm from a nearby nebula, engaging the Cerberus forces. Taking advantage of the distraction, he plotted a course for the nearby moon where the secret facility was hidden. As he entered the moon's thin atmosphere, Kyle spotted the sprawling Cerberus complex nestled within a massive crater. He set the alien craft down behind a ridge, out of sight of the facility's defenses. Kyle donned his combat gear and exited the ship, the moon's low gravity making each step feel unnaturally light. He activated his tactical cloak, becoming nearly invisible as he approached the facility's perimeter. Guards patrolled the electrified fence, their Cerberus insignias glinting in the starlight. Kyle waited for a gap in their patrol pattern, then quickly cut through the fence with his Omni tool. He slipped inside, hugging the shadows of the prefab structures. As he neared the main complex, Kyle overheard two technicians talking. Harper's pushing the timetable up, one said. Says we need to be ready to seize the Arcturus relay within the week. That's soon, but the targeting systems aren't fully calibrated yet. Doesn't matter, he says it's now or never. Kyle's blood ran cold. If Cerberus took control of Arcturus, they could cripple galactic travel in a single stroke. He had to stop them, regardless of the cost. Spotting an access terminal, Kyle interfaced with it, using the decryption codes the dying, elusive man had given him. Schematics of the facility's layout appeared on his Omni tool. He quickly located the central control room and plotted the fastest route. As Kyle made his way deeper into the facility, alarms suddenly blared. He cursed, realizing his presence had been detected. The sound of booted feet echoed through the corridors as Cerberus troops mobilized. Kyle sprinted down the hallway, his cloak flickering as he pushed it beyond its usual duration. He rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of Cerberus commandos. "There he is!" one shouted, raising his weapon. Kyle dove for cover as gunfire erupted around him. He returned fire, his shots finding gaps in their armor, but more troops were converging on his position. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the facility. Through a nearby viewport, Kyle saw Alliance dropships descending, disgorging soldiers onto the moon's surface. His comms crackled. "Kyle, it's Shepard. We're here to crash the party. What's your status?" "Pinned down near the central control room," Kyle replied, ducking as a grenade sailed overhead. "I need to get inside and shut down their relay targeting systems." "Copy that. We'll draw their fire. Go." Kyle heard the sound of pitched battle erupting throughout the facility. Taking advantage of the chaos, he charged towards the control room, shoulder-checking a Cerberus engineer who tried to block his path. The massive blast doors of the control center loomed before him. Kyle placed breaching charges and took cover. The explosion reverberated through the corridor, and he surged forward into the smoke-filled room. Inside, he found Jack Harper hunched over a holographic display, frantically inputting commands. The man who had once been his friend looked up, his cybernetic eyes blazing with fury. "Kyle," Jack snarled, "you're too late. In moments, Cerberus will control every mass relay in the galaxy. Humanity's dominance will be assured." Kyle raised his weapon. "It's over, Jack. Stand down now." Jack lunged for a nearby Consul. Kyle fired, the shot grazing Jack's arm, but it wasn't enough to stop him from slamming his hand down on the activation panel. The room filled with a blinding light as the relay targeting system powered up. Kyle knew he had only seconds to act before Cerberus's plan came to fruition. Kyle lunged for the control panel, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. The room trembled as the relay targeting system powered up, its energy building to a crescendo. He had mere seconds to abort the process. "Step away from the console, Robinson," Jack's voice cut through the chaos. Kyle ignored him, focusing on overriding the system. A stray shot from Jack's pistol grazed his shoulder, but he didn't flinch. With a final command, the targeting system powered down, its lights fading. Jack roared in frustration, charging at Kyle. They collided, grappling fiercely as alarms blared throughout the facility. Kyle felt the cybernetic enhancements in Jack's limbs, giving him inhuman strength. "You've ruined everything," Jack snarled, pinning Kyle against a wall. Kyle headbutted him, breaking free. "I'm saving humanity from your twisted vision." The room shook violently. Through the viewports, Kyle saw Alliance ships engaging the Cerberus fleet. He activated his comms. "Shepard, we need extraction." "On our way!" Shepard's voice crackled. "Hold position!" Jack lunged again, but Kyle sidestepped, sending him crashing into a bank of computers. Sparks flew as Jack stumbled to his feet, his cybernetic eyes glowing with rage. "This isn't over," Jack growled. Before Kyle could respond, the ceiling caved in. Debris rained down, forcing them apart. Through the gap, Kyle saw an Alliance shuttle hovering above. "Kyle, jump!" Shepard shouted from the open hatch. With one last look at Jack, who was struggling to free himself from the rubble, Kyle leapt. Shepard's strong grip pulled him into the shuttle as it peeled away from the crumbling facility. As they sped towards the Alliance flagship, Kyle watched the Cerberus base collapse in on itself. He took a deep breath, realizing how close they'd come to disaster. "Good work down there," Shepard said, clapping him on the shoulder. "But I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Kyle nodded grimly. "Cerberus has its tentacles everywhere. We need to root them out fast." The shuttle docked with the Alliance ship. As Kyle stepped out, he was met by a familiar face, Wesen, the Ferengi informant who'd helped expose Cerberus's plan. "Ah, Consul Robinson," Wazin said, his large ears twitching nervously. "I trust the information proved useful?" "It did," Kyle replied. "But we're not done yet. I need everything you have on Cerberus's remaining operations." Wazin nodded eagerly. Of course. I've compiled a list of suspected Cerberus cells across several sectors. For a modest fee, of course." Kyle sighed, leading Wazin towards the ship's command center. As they walked, he noticed the worried looks on the crew's faces. News of the battle was spreading fast. In the command center, holographic displays showed the aftermath of the engagement. The disrupted mass relays had thrown interstellar travel into chaos. Reports were flooding in of opportunistic attacks on now isolated colonies. Admiral Hackett's weathered face appeared on the main screen. "Robinson, we need you to head up a task force. Your mission: shut down these Cerberus remnants and stabilize the affected regions." Kyle straightened, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Understood, Admiral. Where do we start?" Hackett's expression darkened. "We've detected unusual activity in the Terminus systems. A warlord named Arya Talok is making a play for power. Start there and be careful. Without the relays, you'll be on your own out there." Kyle turned to his team, seeing grit in their eyes. "All right, let's move out. We've got a galaxy to save." As they prepared to depart, Kyle couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict. Somewhere out there, Cerberus was regrouping, and he knew Jack Harper wouldn't rest until he had his revenge. Kyle's hands flew across the holographic display, his eyes darting between streams of data as the Alliance flagship hurtled through space. The ship shuddered, straining against the gravitational forces of the expanding singularity. "Status report!" Kyle barked, sweat beading on his forehead. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Ferengi outpost on Zeta 9. The vortex is expanding faster than our projections." Kyle hit his fist on the console. "Damn it, we need more time!" He turned to face the viewport, watching as distant stars blinked out of existence, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The enormity of the threat took a toll on him. "Sir," a young ensign called out, her voice trembling, "we're receiving a transmission from Araxis's forces. They're hitting the Tharsis colony." Kyle cursed under his breath. Even now, with reality itself unraveling, the power-hungry warlord refused to relent. He had to make an impossible choice. "Patch me through to Admiral Hackett," Kyle ordered, his jaw clenching. Hackett's weathered face appeared on the main screen. "Robinson, tell me you have good news." Kyle shook his head. "Sir, we're out of options. We need to implement the Omega Protocol." Hackett's eyes widened. "The Vega system. Kyle, there are millions of civilians." "I know," Kyle cut him off, his voice heavy. "But if we don't act now, billions more will die when that singularity tears through the galactic core." A tense silence hung between them. Finally, Hackett nodded. "Do it. May God forgive us." Kyle turned to his crew, their faces a mix of fear and resolution. "Set course for the Vega system. Maximum speed." As the ship lurched into FTL, Kyle retreated to his quarters. He activated a secure channel on his personal terminal. Weazen's face appeared, his large Ferengi ears twitching nervously. "Ah, Consul Robinson. I trust you have news of our mutual adversaries?" Kyle nodded grimly. "I do, but first I need you to evacuate your people from the Vega system. Immediately." Weazen's eyes narrowed. "Why? What aren't you telling me?" "There's no time to explain. Just do it, Wezen, please." The Ferengi studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, but don't think this concludes our arrangement." The transmission cut off, leaving Kyle alone with his thoughts. He pulled up the schematics for the Stellar Harvester, reviewing the untested technology that held the hope of the universe in its balance. A violent tremor rocked the ship, nearly throwing Kyle from his feet. He rushed back to the bridge where chaos reigned. "Report!" he shouted over the blaring alarms. Chen looked up from his station, his face pale. Sir, it's Harper. Somehow, he survived. He's attacking the fleet. Through the viewport, Kyle watched in horror as reality itself seemed to warp and twist. Ships buckled and imploded, their hulls crumpling like paper as Harper's reality-bending powers tore through their defenses. "All hands, battle stations!" Kyle ordered, strapping himself into the command chair. "We make our stand here, for the galaxy." As the Alliance fleet engaged Harper's forces, Kyle knew that every second they brought them closer to either salvation or annihilation. The Vega system loomed ahead, its sun pulsing with the potential energy that could save them all, or doom countless innocents to a fiery death. The bridge of Kyle's flagship shuddered violently as the Stellar Harvester's containment fields collapsed. Warning klaxons blared, their urgent wails drowned out by the groaning of stressed metal. Kyle gripped the arms of his command chair, his fist clenched as he watched the holographic display flicker and distort. "Containment failure!" Lieutenant Chen shouted over the cacophony. "The rig's going critical!" Kyle's stomach dropped as he witnessed the Harvester's reactors overload in a blinding flash. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing through the doomed system with terrifying speed. Entire planets shattered like glass, their fragments drawn inexorably into the singularity's maw. "All ships, emergency retreat," Kyle barked into the comm. "Get us out of here now!" The helmsman's fingers flew across the controls, but the ship lurched sickeningly as the vortex's gravitational pull intensified. Through the viewports, Kyle watched in horror as Allied vessels were torn apart, their crews silently screaming as they were pulled into oblivion. "Sublight drives failing," the engineer reported, her voice cracking with fear. "We're being pulled in." Kyle's mind raced, searching for any option that might save his crew. "The mass relay. Can we make the jump?" "It's unstable, sir," Chen warned. "The vortex is affecting the entire network." "We have no choice," Kyle said grimly. "All remaining ships plot a course for the relay. It's our only shot." The crippled flagship limped toward the relay, its hull groaning under the immense gravitational stress. Kyle held his breath as they approached, praying to whatever cosmic forces might be listening. Initiating jump in 3, 2, 1. The familiar blue tunnel of relay transit enveloped them, but something was wrong. The ship bucked and shuddered, alarms screaming as reality itself seemed to twist around them. "We're off course," Chen yelled. "The exit vector's destabilized." With a sickening lurch, the ship was violently ejected from the relay corridor. Kyle's head slammed against his chair, stars exploding behind his eyes. When his vision cleared, he found himself staring into the endless void of uncharted space. "Report," he croaked, tasting blood in his mouth. "Multiple hull breaches," the damage control officer responded. "Life support failing. We're venting atmosphere." Kyle struggled to his feet, stumbling to the main console. "What about the rest of the fleet?" Chen shook his head, his face ashen. "Scattered. We're picking up distress beacons, but they're light years apart." As if to punctuate their dire situation, the bridge lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the crew in an eerie red glow. Kyle stared at the swirling cosmos beyond the viewports, the weight of failure crushing down upon him. Everything he had worked for, every sacrifice made, all of it had been for nothing. The galaxy itself was unraveling, and he had been powerless to stop it. A static-filled crackle from the comm system startled him from his despair. "Robinson, do you read?" Kyle's eyes widened in disbelief. He knew that voice. "Wezen?" The Ferengi's garbled transmission cut through the oppressive silence of the bridge. "Survived. Have a plan. One last chance." Hope, faint but undeniable, stirred in Kyle's chest. He leaned closer to the comm, straining to hear every word. "Go ahead, Wezen. We're listening."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.